All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Metaverse Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Traplin, and I have with me one Curt Covert. Coolest name ever. Curt is the founder, creative force, and jack of all trades at SmirkDagger. He's worn all the hats, including art director, copywriter, marketer, and concept director. And in a past life, he was also the creative director and marketing planner for promotion agencies servicing Fortune 500 companies like M&Ms, Jameson, Dannon, Unilever, Disney theme park eateries, and more. That's quite the resume.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, well, thanks so much. I appreciate you having me.
Beautiful. So we're going to talk a little bit about the business of publishing games, and we're going to talk about the business of selling those games.
Right.
So, first stop. I always like to begin a little bit with the origin story about, how you got to where you are. So tell us a little bit about why you got into the game publishing business.
Well, it was originally without intent. I've loved games, since I was a kid. And I even helped a friend of mine develop one soon after I graduated college. But I just was building expansions for games that I love for me and my friends. And at one point I spent about 2 years on the development of a dead game just for the fan base. And someone finally said, well, why don't you just make your own game? You spend all this time and effort, making these things look amazing. Just make a game. It's like, well, I'd never thought of it. And turned out it was much harder than I imagined. It was easier to build on someone's brilliance than start from scratch. But yeah, finally in 2002, I'd come up with a game called Hex, which I released a year later in 2003. And I mean, there was no Kickstarter back then, so I ended up putting my house on a second mortgage in order to pay for that game. And luckily, I'm still here today.
Well, I'm glad it worked out for you.
Yeah.
So that's quite a leap going into that, and obviously, like you said, you put your house up basically as a bet towards making this thing work. So that's some confidence.
Well, so I didn't go in completely blind. I talked to like anyone that would ever talk to me about it, and I got a lot of great industry support from people who basically cautioned me off and said, "Don't do it." but like anyone who's an entrepreneur and has a dream, I decided to move forward. I pressure tested my first design out at Gen Con before I even had printed a game. I printed like 100 copies at Kinko's at that time, I think it was. And it was just Xeroxed on cardstock, and you had to assemble your own tokens. But with that handmade game, I sold almost 100 at Gen Con with nothing more than a card table and a small sign on it at a retailer's booth. And again, I moved 100 of them with nothing but this handmade thing, and no one knew who I was, so I figured, well, if I could sell a good 75 of them this way, maybe I've actually got something.
That's a fair point. So that shows the power of the minimally viable product, right? You got just what you needed to convey the value of what you're offering, and the people recognized it and took you up on it.
Yeah.
So that's a very good way of opening things up in terms of starting a business. I appreciate that. I like that. So you took the leap and you decided that, all right, I got this. This game seems to be selling. Yeah. Let's make 1,000 copies, right? Or something along those lines.
Except I was really dumb. I made 5,000 copies.
Ooh.
And I did so without any means of distribution.
And you filled up your house?
Well, I had a warehouse. But they delivered on Halloween Day in 2003, and I was not going to be able to meet with distributors or anyone else until the next Gamma. So that was a little bit. There's something I didn't really think about up front too well. But I ended up, through some miracle, selling half of the print run to Spencer's Gifts at that time, and I did a cold call. They never take cold calls, but they did this time, and I moved half the run, and then I quickly met Aldo Giosi, who, as you may know, was Impressions, a consolidator, and he saw that I was, new on the list for Gamma Trade Show, and he said, that looks like a pretty cool product. I can get you kind of fully distributed in one go if you just kind of, sign on with me. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. So
here you go.
Yeah, so that was my my saving grace. Those two things.
Oh, okay. So what happened after that? After you had the big break, you got it, you made it, you printed your product, you did your big leap as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
How did it develop after that?
Well, so very slowly, because I still had a very time-consuming job. I was a creative director at a marketing agency. I was making a six-figure salary, so I wasn't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But I was doing this from like 9 to midnight every night. And I did one product a year. I had slow, very planned growth. And for a long time, I was satisfied just, being out there, getting my games out there, slowly, and developing my name over time. Eventually I started thinking about, maybe I should really make a go of this and go full time, but that wasn't going to be really for 14 years. I did this, basically just. I mean, it was more than a hobby business, but I didn't have to make my living doing it. Was the critical factor. And then all of a sudden, the marketing jobs really dried up in Connecticut, and I said, well, I think this is my pivot point. So, about 4 years ago or so, I made the change. I expanded my line because I was serving a very niche audience, but and I've been able to support myself doing it since. So
it's always nice to hear that, like, it rolled out and it's turned into something that's a success. It's providing you with a good lifestyle and a good life, and you get to do what you like. So that's always a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's also interesting that you stuck through it for so long. Basically, this decades-long progression of a side hustle and turning it into a full-blown business. That's a lot of commitment to stick to for that long.
It's about passion. I think very few people get into this because it is a make money hand over fist. I think that's the dream, but it's not necessarily the reality. And I just love doing it, and I loved every aspect of it. Even just like being at a convention and demoing my games, or going to a retailer and showcasing them, for people who were walking in. I absolutely love it. My very first game I've probably demoed thousands of times, but it's still very fresh every time I do it because the people are always new, and the reactions are just as invigorating when they're experiencing this game than the first time. And that's what gets me up in the morning and doing it. I love designing games, showing games, making them. For whatever reason, this is just a perfect career for me.
It reminds me of a saying that, I don't know if you've ever met John Coviello before, but he's owner of Little Shop of Magic, and I've had him on the show a couple of times, and he has a particular phrase that he likes to say with regards to the game business, and it's, if you want to make $1 million starting a game, but you got to start with 2. Right?
Yes.
That's, it's a little bit, you don't get in it for money. You don't get in here for the money.
Yeah.
It's for, like you said, the passion and the excitement, and it's just the purpose of the gaming industry and what games do for life and what games mean to people and that kind of thing. That's what sustains.
Yeah.
So I can definitely appreciate that. So interesting thought, perhaps, in the spirit of that, and the fact that, games are all about bringing people together. I get the sense that Smirk and Dagger, your theme is a little bit different. The angle of some of the games that you've got are maybe not so connecty and feel good all the time. It's there's a little bit of a mischief element underneath them all.
Yeah, well, so I think for people who know my brand, and especially where it started, I decided to plant my flag in a kind of an unusual place. I took a page looking at companies like Cheap Ass Games and games that are like really stood for something. Looney Labs, they've got a real vibe. You kind of know what you're getting into. And as a marketer, I knew that if I was going to be a brand new company, I wanted to stand for something. I wanted to be known for something. And as I looked deep, the games that I absolutely loved more than anything else had a take that vibe to them. And that's because I really appreciate games where you get emotionally involved in the game, where you're on this emotional roller coaster of highs and lows, and Take That games do that in a really interesting way, as do Push Your Luck and some other things. But I feel like that creates immersive experiences, memorable experiences, things where people, when they leave the table, they're not talking about how the dice fell, but what the interactions were. And people will tell those stories about, what you did to me at that time, for ages. And I just think it's wonderful. Plus, it's also a really interesting psychological dive, kind of a crucible for the human spirit, if you will. And watching the way people react when you give them the permission to be the bad guy. It's... we sometimes love to cheer on the villains in films, and there's same kind of catharsis in getting to do the bad things in this controlled environment. That is kind of, I don't know, it's something unique. And now, obviously, it's not everyone's style, and I knew that I was building a niche. But it's a niche where the benefit of, not necessarily appealing to everyone was that those that I did appeal to basically were fans for life and bought almost everything that I ever made. And so while I wasn't broad, I was very deep. And that I think helped me survive. However, when I went full time, I knew that was not going to be a situation that I could maintain if I wanted to be, really, doing everything for a living and making my living from it. So, still true to the spirit that what I value in games, I still want my games to be emotionally involving, narrative based. I want the pieces to fall away for the experience. And so now, rather than just kind of, take that angst, I'm looking for all kinds of different emotional experiences that people can have. We've got a heartwarming storytelling game. We've got, a game coming up where you're racing to save sea life from a gushing oil rig spill. There's all kinds of ways that you can really involve people emotionally in your game, and that's what I love is making you feel like you're almost in a movie. That's how immersed you get.
I like it. It's an interesting angle for sure. And I can again, I appreciate the different take on gaming, and like you said, put your flag into something. Maybe this is what I stand for. This is the theme that we're going for. Obviously, going for a niche is not necessarily a bad thing. Right? Choosing a particular style of gaming, and that's what you're going to represent, is a good way to get known for something, and it's a good place to kind of like set up a foundation to build on. So it makes a lot of sense to go that route. I thought that, maybe not contradiction, but the juxtaposition between, stabbing somebody in the back in a board game, which, as fun as it can be, versus the like human emotional connection that usually comes from an immersive board game kind of experience.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because one of the things that can happen even with that kind of backstabbing and betrayal is that, having gone through it, none of the games, you enter into a social contract when you play one of my games. That's kind of backstabby and Take That. It's going to happen to you. So you have to understand there's a give and take. You tell everyone up front, this is the kind of game it is. Terrible things are going to happen. You're going to perpetrate some, and you're going to take some. And everyone agrees, yep, cool, that's what we're doing. And yeah, there may be a couple rough feelings and shaking of fists and cursing in your name, but what ends up, the bonding that happens is almost like a band of brothers in a war. You've lived through something. and I think that's kind of the bonding experience that actually happens. And again, people will talk about the games well after the game gets put away, because they were real social experiences that people had.
Definitely. I've had my fair share of gaming experiences that have gone on to become almost shaping the narrative of your life in some regard. Like, it becomes part of like the friendship that you have with somebody in some cases, right? It's just this turning point in your life together, which is kind of weird that you can have this one shared experience over, some cardboard and some playing tokens or something like that.
Truly. Yeah.
But it can definitely happen. So it's I like the idea that you're making games that kind of create that experience. That's the focus, is you're trying to kind of make that happen for people, on the tabletop, so that they can have that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. So I guess an interesting point then is who are you making these games for? Who is your niche? What kind of people are you trying to introduce?
Well, so one of the things that this area of gaming, connects well for are casual and new gamers in particular. A lot of new gamers, if they were going to kind of sit down and play like everyone's favorite Euro, there's a lot of deep rules to absorb. There's, just going through the rule book alone can be a little daunting. And for a lot of people who, when you first say board games to them, and their minds instantly go to like, the very broad market games we all grew up with, they're still thinking about roll and move. And having this kind of very immersive experience in a board game, where they really get pulled in and they get connected with their emotions, it really welcomes them to a different style of what board games can be. So I tend my games to kind of be, mid-weight or a little bit less. I like them to be, almost gateway. Some of them are a little bit deeper, some less so. But I like to be very welcoming and broad with my titles, so that you can get into the game quickly, you can have this great experience, and really, still long for more. And so, yeah, while certainly it's going to appeal to, really established gamers as well, less so for people who just absolutely love pure strategy, clean Euro design. Mine is a little bit different, maybe a palate cleanser perhaps, or some of them are short enough where they can be, great games to get you into the evening. But I think casual gamers are probably where my core is.
The visual in my head was the idea of the very low learning curve. So like, make easy to get into, easy to adopt. Somebody could just walk in and use, just like tic-tac-toe. Very simple, easy rules. Maybe tic-tac-toe is not the greatest example.
Probably not, yeah.
The idea of like, it's super easy. A 3-year-old can handle it. You can figure it out. But then the idea is, you have this like level of skill that keeps going. And like the longer you play it, the better you get. And, mastery is very, very far away. But you can keep it going so that people who are, they're interested and they want to play that game, you can get better. But it just takes time. But you're also not going to be so much better that the person who's new to the game will be completely blown out and can't possibly compete with you. Like other games that kind of have that, like chess. I guess chess is a good example where, the rules are relatively simple, but if you're a grandmaster at chess, there's no beginning chess player who's probably ever going to beat you. Right? It's just, you're almost statistically impossible to defeat a grandmaster if you're just getting started.
Yeah. So
the idea of kind of making it so that it's approachable from both ends makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think it's true of my games too, that while, certainly I always, I love to win, my philosophy is I love to play. I love the experience. So a lot of my games, kind of feel that way too. It's not that they're, it's not that none of them are skill-based, but I think they're just generally more experience-based. It's living the movie, and hopefully it works out for me, but I feel just as good having lived through that experience than if I didn't win. So, if that makes sense.
That's always a good place to end up.
Yeah.
where you win or lose, you end up having a good time. That's always a good aspect for a game. That's definitely something you want to aim for. So good stuff. So we're gonna kind of segue sort of into the later half of the conversation. So we did want to talk about the retail end of things.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that you do, that your company does, is that you provide a lot of retail support. You give retailers a lot of resources and things that they can use to further their goals of selling those games. So what kind of stuff do you provide to retailers that maybe other publishers don't?
Well, I think a lot of good publishers do, and it's a matter of sometimes just where do you go to find the stuff. So we have marketing packages that we release through PSI that goes out to the distributors that are available, but they're still a little bit hard to find that way. So what we did is we created a retailer resource page on our website. And whether you go to SmirkDagger.com or SmirkandLaughter.com, it'll be at the very bottom of the page. There's a clickable button that'll take you right there. But some of the things that we offer, we've got, for example, listed on that page, our current stock at the warehouse. Just a note of whether we have the game in stock or not, because very often when you go to a distributor's website, you may see a 0 listed for a particular game, and it may not reflect what the publisher actually has, because the system can lag for various reasons, whether they've made a recent order, if it's shipping over to them, that sort of thing. So we always like to have a place where people can go and say, oh, this is why I can't find it, because it's actually out of stock. Or, no, there are more, so let me see if I can get them. The other thing is we do have a way to sign up as a retailer directly with us in case people are interested in doing direct sales. So there's an order form, and we've got a catalog there. We also have a newsletter sign up. But importantly, we have these marketing kits, and that's true of all the games for the past 3-4 years. In that downloadable nugget, you've got box and game photos. You've got all the art and logo assets in case you want to make something for yourself. There's always a sell sheet which has all the details and selling points for the game. We've got Facebook ads, graphics that are ready to kind of post on social, and we've even got demo scripts. These are specifically demo scripts for a short overview by a retailer. And what we did is obviously, when we're at shows, we do a whole bunch of different demos. We've got a 5-second, a 30-second, a 2-minute, a 5-minute, and what we did is we kind of took the 2 to 3 minute pitch for our game, and we condensed it in a script form, telling you exactly what pieces to set out, what cards to have ready, what to kind of point at and say these kind of top line things. So we're not necessarily trying to teach people the game, we're trying to give the broad concepts, because we know that retailers don't have time necessarily to kind of play through or teach someone the game, but you want to give them just a little bit of flavor so they can really kind of experience what's cool about the game. And that's what we provided in these demo scripts.
I love the idea of helping retailers kind of along the selling process of showing them the finer points. This is the things that your customers are going to care about. So I definitely like the idea of here are the key points. This is all you need to know in order to sell this game. Yeah, definitely good stuff. So,
and then some of the other things that we've got too. We have a private Facebook retailer group as well, which it's kind of connected to our Smirk and Dagger Facebook page, and we can get you a link for that as well. But the I don't spam that, but whenever we have important news that retailers will care about, that's where I message first. We also have a retailer-based newsletter, but the Facebook group is where I put just a little bit more timely information.
Sure. We'll make sure those links get in the show notes.
Yep. And then we also we always offer demo copies of our games, and I think that's really important to a lot of retailers. Very often I'll deliver those in person, either at a show or if I'm stopping by a store, which I try to do as often as I can. The other thing is that if someone ends up putting in an order direct with us, it's very easy to put an extra demo copy in the box and send that out as well. So, but demos, whether they just are displayed, whether they're overviewed, whether they're part of a retailer's board game library, demos sell games, so we like to support retailers by providing those tools.
Absolutely. So what would you say to stores who don't have the manpower or the time to commit to like making a demo or to putting up a demo table?
Well, yeah, and that's something that I've heard occasionally. Though I think there's been a lot of discussion of late about what constitutes a demo, and I think like I said earlier, it's about scalability. You can do a pretty decent demo in. You can do a great back of the box demo overviewing what you know about the game. You can do a 2-minute if it's on top of a table, just covering the top lines, or if people want to go a little deeper and that person has the wherewithal, yeah, you can take it a little bit deeper if that person has taken the time to actually understand or maybe has already played the game. I've got a retailer near me that assigns a game a week to their staff. Just here's a game, go learn it, so that you can talk about it. And then, by the way, tell everyone else what, some of the cool things about it. And I thought that was a really interesting way of doing that, kind of spreading it out amongst the staff. But the other thing is that, there's also live versus like social post demos. So yeah, if you don't have time necessarily, if you've only got 1 or 2 people working in the store, doing a demo of a game might be a little burdensome. But if you've got someone who's already doing social for your store, especially now with COVID, we've had to have a lot more outreach to our consumer bases. So now you could actually do that demo on a social and send it right to the people who are going to be shopping your store. And maybe even tie that to like a special that you might run on the game. But another thing, of course, is with you guys over at the Metaverse, there are a roster of companies that are now doing online demos. So you can even have I'm one of the companies that signed up to say, yeah, we'd love to do demos for your staff or your customer base. So we'll set something up. And we'll actually go on Tabletop Simulator and invite your staff or your consumers in and play the demo there. And again, they can then go right to the store and buy a copy. The other thing too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking like the idea of getting the game into the players' hands and getting them the experience is the easiest way to get them to want it, to convey that value, to show them that this is a game that you will like, you should buy it, and usually that experience is enough for them to say, yeah, you're right, I will buy it. So the idea of having the demo, and I really like the suggestion of just kind of doing that at scale by putting that on your social media. Like the demo, as great as it is to have a face-to-face interaction with somebody, it's kind of challenging these days. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible to have that same experience, or at least a similar experience, on a Facebook Live or something like that. You set up a camera. If a lot of stores have the equipment at this point these days. Set up the board, set up the camera, have a couple people sit down. You and your employees when you have an opportunity, and just talk about it. And like you said, you could easily make an offer on the video right there to be like, hey, this is the new game that we just got in, and it's great, and these are the reasons why it's great. You should check it out. And if you click here, boom, you can go straight to the shopping cart, and you can pick it up on our website, and we get 10% off, whatever you want to do, right? Whatever special offer you want to make for the first X number of people or whatever.
Yeah.
All kinds of ways that you could approach it, but you can leverage your social media so much more effectively.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And of course, once we get back into kind of the business that we all know and love, when everyone is in our stores and spending some time. The other thing is that for people who don't have a lot of staff to dedicate to demos, certainly you'll know which folks in your store are interested in showing off games and just love doing it, you can always kind of lean into them. But also, from an organized point of view, you can also tap into Envoy. Now, Envoy is a third-party national demo team, and they have people who train on all of our board games, and the companies become members of Envoy. So we're paying for people to learn and go out and show our games, and it doesn't cost retailers anything. But you can, through Envoy, either bring a trained Envoy person in, or actually have one of your staff members become an Envoy person, and then get all the training, the game, all of that from them. Importantly, they also do splash events, and this is something they do when a new product launches. And so they'll work with a publisher, and they'll say, "Hey, all right, you've got the Night Cage coming out around Halloween. We want to do a big Halloween event. So we're gonna have our envoys. We got like 120 people who are ready to go out there and show the game." And they're going to approach the retailers, or the retailers will hear about it and say, "Oh yeah, you know what? I'll sign up. I'll put one of my guys, make them an envoy, and be part of this." And it becomes a big one-day event in your store, or maybe it's the weekend. So that's another great way to create some buzz and get some demos in the store without necessarily having to pull in your own manpower. Envoy can provide it.
I like it. It's funny because when you mentioned that, you were the second person that day to mention that to me.
Oh. And
I've never heard of it before. I hadn't encountered them before, so now I've got somebody else to pay attention to and see what's going on and see if maybe we can work something out. So it's very exciting. I do like the idea of having this team of people that go around over the nation and kind of help retailers by demoing. I like the connections that they're building along those lines. So
yeah,
very cool program.
They had started kind of dedicated to conventions and showcasing games at conventions. And I was one of kind of the first companies in, and I said, "Hey, listen, I think we really need to have a retail program, and it's got to make sense for retailers. It can't be burdensome on them." And then we also talked about how to get the focus of splash events, and we coordinate making sure games stores have access to those games so they can make use of that demo to actually turn volume. And so that was something that was very much thought of with retailers in mind, and hopefully that's something that folks out there can start taking advantage of.
Links will be in the show notes for somebody who wants to do a little bit of research or connect with the program and see what they can do for them. Yeah, all of that. Go ahead.
There's one other thing I thought of too. We've just started working with Dized. Have you heard of Dized?
It's funny. I was going to mention Dized.
Okay.
They were on the show 3 episods ago.
Oh, that's right.
I was going to link them up. Yeah.
Yes. So we've now made 2 tutorial apps with Dized, one for Shobu and one for the Night Cage thus far. And for those who have not heard about Dized, Dized it's almost like having a demo person at the table with you. It's not watching a how-to video. It's a
interactive tutorial.
Yeah, so you hit go and you open the box and it walks you through setup and through an entire game, as though someone was doing that in a demo space with you. So you can get right into the game. Now, this is great for board game libraries. If you put a little shelf talker and say, or you just say, "Hey, these games have Dized apps," they can just go right to the internet and take down the game and start playing, which is pretty darn cool. It's also great for game cafes or anywhere you just want to jump right into a game. The other thing that I have found, and I'm hoping, is that it will help reduce the barrier to entry for new gamers or even gift buyers. Some folks who just come into your store who are not gamers themselves, but they have someone in their life that they know likes games, but they don't really know what's a good game, or maybe they're concerned, oh, are we going to be able to learn this game? Well, something like Dized, you can say, hey, well, this will walk you right through. Oh, well, that takes some of the burden off, and therefore you can buy with more confidence. And I think that is kind of an untapped potential for what Dized can offer.
I agree. I really like what Dized is bringing to the table, physically and metaphorically. I like what's going on over there. The idea of marrying, some of the best aspects of like what makes a video game good, what makes a video game good for new players, because obviously most video games these days don't come with a big rule book that you have to learn. You learn on the fly. That's the whole idea. You can just pick it up, start the game, and then the game will tell you what you need to do when you need to learn it, and it'll walk you into the game so that you can become proficient at it and enjoy the process while you're at it. And from what I've seen, Dized replicates that really well for tabletop games. So I really love the fact that they brought those two things together. And it seems like as more publishers start, publishing their own version of the app, their own tutorials on the app, it's only going to get better and more valuable for people, for both ends, for retailers who want to show off and showcase a game and allow customers kind of get a taste before they jump in.
Yeah.
But also for gamers, right? Like just somebody who's like, I just picked up a new game. Does it have the thing that'll show me how to play the game and my friends, so I don't have to spend 20 minutes reading this rule book before we can even open the box?
Exactly.
It's all good around. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, the other really cool thing, even for gamers who are just dyed in the wool gamers, that the rule book is their precious thing and they wouldn't part with it if they could. They now have an interactive rule book as well, so you can just go on and either click right to the section that you need, or you can do a keyword search. In Shobu, pushing. And it'll show you all the different areas in the rule book that will deal with pushing a stone. And so you just click on those things. So there's a lot of really interesting things going on with Dized that I think are, once it really starts, getting some momentum, it's gonna really just kind of blossom.
Yeah, it's gonna blow up. I think they've got a lot of potential. So one of the things that I did want to talk about, why I had you, was merchandising. Merchandising, we all know how important that is to selling a game, how important it can be to just have a game, at eye level in a well-lit space and certain just simple things like that. That can be a big difference in how well a certain portion of your store sells. It may not even be the product sometimes. It could be literally just the shelf that you have it on.
Absolutely.
So merchandising is very important. So what advice do you have for stores who are, they want to, how can they merchandise their stores more effectively? Well,
so I won't pretend I've never been a retailer. So my perspective comes from my 20 years as a marketer of consumer products for some big companies. One of the things that merchandising and marketing and building a customer base, they all kind of it's a fluid, a spectrum of tools that can really help move volume and build the base. And one of the first things, and I think I'm sure most retailers do this, and first of all, just knowing and identifying your customers and identifying the growth markets. And we know that, it's less about demographics. This is all about psychographics. And in our case, sometimes it's specifically on, what games are people about. So some people are they're CCG, collectible card players. They're board gamers, they're war gamers, role-playing, comics, collectibles, and you segment your stores, to actually, people know where to go in your store to find the things that they're looking for. But I think there's also a way to start, making sure you're merchandising and marketing and speaking to the types of consumers that you have in your store. And so that can range from, alpha gamers, casual gamers, brand new gamers, family gamers, and like I said before, gift buyers. They all come into your store with like a different perspective, different barriers, different things they're looking for, and some are potentially under marketed to, or under merchandised to, potentially, depending on what your store is like. So Kylie over at Games Unlimited, I think he's been a guest on your show as well.
Yes, yes.
At GTS this year, he did this great presentation, which I popped in, and he was talking all about how you shouldn't go and chase board gamers, the alpha gamers. You should really try to make new gamers, because those people are going to be the people who are not going to be swayed by trying to find the best price on Amazon, because they're coming to you for a slightly different reason. So alpha gamers, they already know what they want. They just want to know if you have it at a competitive price, right? They're the great white whale, but they tend to go online to bargain shop or to pre-order, so they don't miss that one hotness that they really want. And they do buy more, but on average, they may not necessarily be buying from that store. So, but one of the things that's interesting about alpha gamers is that some are more collectors than players. They hunt the hotness so often that their games tend to feel staler sooner, which means they eventually start thinking about culling some of their collection, that for those that didn't make the cut, right? So there's an idea of like the board game exchange, and this is something that I know Travis over at Millennium Games does. He buys used board games. And he does not go ahead and check all the parts to make sure they're there, so it's not a drain on his staff. But what he do is he gives them store credit, which they go and buy. They use to buy new product in his store, which is brilliant. So yes, they're going to take some of their stuff, and it creates a buying pattern in the store. At the same time, then he can sell those used copies. And it's kind of a win-win, and I know it's a program that's done extremely well for him, but it keeps alpha gamers in the store and buying products, and that's great. So then it's all about then promoting the fact that you have this solution, and it solves a problem for them. They've got all these games. I'm not sure I'm really using those games. Market that, and you can do that through social. You can create signage. There's all kinds of ways to merchandise once you have that used board game area to really merchandise and market that. On the other hand, there's board game enthusiasts. They buy a decent amount. They love the community of the store, and they actually love supporting you. They're pretty open to your recommendations for new games. They've come to trust you. They come to board game nights. They're truly solid customers. They're really kind of your core customer. One of the things that I have noticed, even in one or two of the stores, closer to me, you kind of have to make sure they also feel the love. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy, especially in your event schedule, to get all swept up in the collectible events. I know one of the stores near me, we had a dedicated board game night, and then it kept on bleeding in Magic, or taking up tables for role-playing and things like that. And eventually the board gamers stopped coming because they were getting edged out. So you just want to make sure you've got a dedicated night. And for that kind of customer, and this is true of, no matter why they come in your store, things that, make them feel like store members, I think is a great way to market and connect with those people. So whether that's perks or a discount program, whether you've got a coffee machine and they have access to it when they're in playing, or whatever it is, just making they feel like they've got a home and a dedicated time that's really just for them and their interests. And I think it's typically the war gamers and CCG folks that tend to because those events, are so pervasive, and that's what really drives that group in. Just make sure you don't lose your board gamers in the process.
That's good advice. That's good advice, because I have a distinct experience along those lines where it is kind of funny how different types of gamers kind of become cliquey in a sense.
Oh, sure.
I'm the Magic players, and those are the Warhammer players over there, and they can stay over there. Like those guys are weird. Like it's always like this odd. We all kind of like live in their own hub, their own ecosystem, but I've seen that before in stores where you have the other type of player, whatever happens to be, kind of encroaching on the space, and you kind of have this. It sort of, like you said, it edges you out. It pushes you out in the sense that you kind of maybe this isn't for me. Maybe they're focusing on those people right now, and we're not. You just get the impression maybe you're not as important, right? Maybe maybe the store isn't really trying to cater to you right now, and that's not a good feeling for somebody who's coming to spend money in a business. So.
Yeah,
I do like the idea of, like, if you got a night that's for board games and for board gamers and board game families and people to come, like a board game demo or some sort. If that's what you're doing, then like do that, and then make that the focus. Don't let the other other gamer subgroups kind of like come in and take over the place and make the people feel potentially unwanted.
Yeah. Well, and along those lines, you talk about kind of the spectrum now to, casual gamers, new gamers, family gamers, or even the gift buyers. You can almost, clump them because they're fairly new to the hobby in many cases, or even just outside of the hobby, but, curious. Because we're talking about board games a lot more in the culture now. 10 years ago, people looked at you, with a side eye when you started talking about board games. Now people are like, "Ooh, I've heard about this. Tell me more." Right? So, so the whole thing there is, and this is not a surprise to anybody, but it's a matter of making them feel welcome, and that is, sometimes there are, It's about greeting them when they come in. It's about how the store is decorated. It's about you're up front of the store. Anything that you walk in, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I feel okay in here. That's really important for welcoming people new to the hobby in. And of course, obviously, providing guidance and expertise. I mean, that's why they're coming to the store. Anyone can go and buy a game online, but the benefit of coming into the store is that expertise. And, especially if I'm kind of new, I walk in and it's overload, right? So how can you help me confront that? So first of all, yeah, you can lower the barriers by staging more familiar games in the upfront. You can, stage different styles of games just for for new gamers, like whether it's the style of the game, so it's more like party style or a price point or just easy to learn games. There can be really a whole section where you're up at the front that brings those new folks in and makes them feel comfortable. And anything you can do to give them confidence to make a purchase, whether that's a recommendation or that kind of thing, terrific. Social, I mean, talk to that specific audience about go on and do 5 minutes on, hey, you've heard about board game nights. How do you make them fun, right? And you really start creating the idea of, oh, great, there's this thing I know about, I've heard about, and now I want to engage more with it, and these guys can help me get there. That's a lot of it. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a challenge sometimes.
Oh, no question.
One of the big obstacles for somebody who's been in the business forever is you have the expert perspective for the most part. Like you've been saturated in gaming for so long that you are used to it. It's just part of who you are, and part of your life. To pull back and be like, okay, do you remember what it's like when you didn't know what the board game world was like? Can you imagine that perspective for somebody who's never been in a board game store, never come into that world, and walking in there for the first time and just be seeing like 10,000 games on the shelf of different colors and shapes and sizes and just complete overwhelm, right? How can you help them ease into it, right? Because a confused customer doesn't buy, right? So
correct. Yeah.
So the idea of like going back to the beginner's mind, right? That's it's a challenge, and it's something we all have to work on if we want to be able to speak to them in a way that actually helps.
Yeah. And very often it's about just making, I mean, you're certainly going to be talking direct to those people who are very involved in CCGs and war games. Like, you know, talking specifically to your audience, like it's always better if you're going to do an email blast. It'd be better to segment your email blasts by interest base, so they know that anytime they get one, it's talking directly to them about something they care about. So if you can break up your list into people you know are just there for war games and there for CCGs, you probably have more bang for your buck on opens. But in general, whenever I looked at a marketing challenge for a client, I always looked at some point to borrow brilliance from others, from other industries, from other companies. You know, there are ways that people have tackled marketing and merchandising in the past, and what can we learn from how other industries do things and bring it into what we do, and suddenly it's an innovation. So, for example, and I'm just going to riff on a couple things. So, ideas from a bookstore. Now, I think a lot of people have looked at bookstores as a means of thinking about merchandising. So some of these will not be too surprising, but table talk or shelf talk. There, the little cards, and whether it's just a staff recommendation, which personalizes the experience. So now they feel like they're connecting more with the staff, who they already are going to for advice, but now they see, all right, Tiffany says this is a great game, and I love it because. Or you might have, if you liked game, try this. Because now it gives people an understanding, oh, okay, I know I love that game. This is something I need to try. Or, of course, you can always do, like, bestseller kind of lists, for things that are, really popular. That is not necessarily important for your dyed-in-the-wool gamers, but newer gamers, casual gamers, they will find that a valuable resource. So think about the depth of people who come into the store. Another thing that bookstores do pretty well is they do themed or seasonal features. So tables that are about Halloween. Here are some, great games and collectible figures and other things for Halloween. Or it's a dungeon crawl table. Here are 5 games all about dungeon crawls. Or this is the movies, so you've got Jaws and you've got The Thing and, whatever else. But that's one, it's going to be a way to, anything that's been on the shelf that, even if it's been, a couple months sitting out there, you reposition it, you put a feature on it, all of a sudden it creates a new reason to pay attention, a new reason to care, and a new reason to want and buy it. You can even do things like that are just pure gift ideas, and this is more for, even non-gamers, dads and grads. Here's some great things that dad's gonna love. Or it's Valentine's. Here are some great 2-player games. So any of those kind of things are great ways to merchandise and sell games and give people a reason to buy that they didn't have or weren't thinking about when they first walked in. And that's key. So
merchandise is framing.
Indeed, yeah.
You're giving the product a new frame, a new shine. You're like, this is another angle that you can approach it at. I like that.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump somewhere else. Liquor store. Okay. So what can we learn from a liquor store? So one of the things that liquor stores do is they do have demos. They do have, like, tastes and things like that sometimes. This is about the instant immersive counter demo. What do I mean by that? Take a game like Stringamajig, okay? Which is a great fun game, and it's super simple to teach. So someone comes up to your counter, and you're like, hey, as you're, talking with them, here, take this card, see if I can guess what's on this card. Go ahead and try to make it with this string. So, without even knowing the rules, you can kind of, like, get them to manipulate the string and create the image, and they can have an experience with the game. You might have just sold a game. Or it's code names, and you just put 6 cards on the table, and you give them a clue of, like, okay, find the ones that are connected by, this. Now, you don't have to even talk about the full game. You just like instantly dropping them into a situation, and they got the spirit of the game, and that's a sale. So another thing liquor stores do, again, they do shelf talk. So if you think about wine, they've got quotes from reviewers. So what are the reviewers saying? And we actually offer some of those shelf talkers in our marketing kit, like where we've called some of the interesting quotes on our games and put them on. Or awards. Awards are not so much important to dyed-in-the-wool gamers, but the more casual and new, it gives them more confidence in buying if they see that it's got awards or even a BGG rating. So, man, there's so many. Car dealerships. What can we learn from car dealerships? Test drive, right? So a test drive is how you experience the products at a car dealership. Lynn from the Game Board has a program that I know she does where it's kind of like a rental program. So you can rent a game for X, have the experience home, play the game, and then you either return it, in which case it gets rented out again, or you keep it and you pay the balance or some portion of the balance. And you got a taste. It was you're making a little money on the rental, but hopefully you're making the sale on the game as well.
And I think, if I recall correctly, she has a very high take rate.
Yes.
Very few people will take the game home, play the game, experience the game, and then be like, yeah, it wasn't for me.
Exactly.
The chances are they're going to buy that game. It's very high conversion rate.
Yeah. Another thing is kind of at a car dealership, it's the cars are on showcase, right? So as you're walking through the showroom, you're just kind of browsing, right? So, here's where like even an unmanned game set up on a table can give you an experience. There was a retailer I saw, I think in Connecticut. They actually had a chalkboard set up for a number of their games that they wanted to push that month, and they would swap them out. And when they pulled out the chalkboard, the game was already set up. They put it out, and it just kind of had a bunch of the pieces arranged on the table with written chalk that said, draw 2 cards, then attack. And they would actually write on the chalkboard and give you you could read the chalkboard and get a sense for what the game was like. And I thought that was pretty cool. They did X-Wing that way, and I was like, this is gorgeous. I love the way you've done this. For that same thing, you could even just put like a little shelf card, which gives kind of the overview of what the game is about, just like from the back of the box even. But then now they're actually looking at the components. So
arranged in a nice, appealing, attractive way, to emphasize the action and the coolness or whatever the case happens to be with the particular pieces.
Yeah.
The showcase, right?
Yeah. How about Best Buy? So what do you think I'm going to say about Best Buy?
I don't know.
All right.
Geek Squad.
Yes, exactly right. The Geek Squad. So imagine what the Geek Squad was, right? They had people on the floor you could go with any question. Well, game gurus. Obviously, you've got people who are experts on games in your store. Celebrate them, right? Mark them, put colored shirts on them, buttons, whatever it is, so people know when they see that person, oh, I can go and ask them a question about this game, and they are likely going to know it, or they'll go and find out for you, right? So then you can market them on social, have them do posts about, showcasing their expertise and maybe do unboxings or whatever. Be the store with the experts, promote it, right? That's really all they did at Best Buy was they promoted their experts. And it made them more of a destination when you wanted to know more about products. Or obviously if, Walmart, Home Depot, they had the idea of greeters, sometimes roving. When, unfortunately, and I think it's changing now, but, I remember a day when, you'd walk into a game store and it might be a while before anyone even said hello to you. And obviously, let them walk in, get comfortable, but then find out why they're here, and ask them the 3 questions that are going to help you tailor, direct them to where they can go. Offer them the 3 suggestions, showcase 3 things, but yeah, being that expert and really showcasing that and trumpeting it is a powerful, powerful way to increase sales, broaden your reputation, and increase your customer base, I think, too. For some places, you can even go to something like an experience like Monster Golf escape rooms, that kind of thing, where you become a destination for activities. Now, this isn't right for everybody because not everyone has like the space or special rooms and that kind of thing, but I have definitely seen some stores who have, rooms for birthday party events, or it's a corporate event day and they come in, or it's a private room to rent for your D&D group or board gaming, and it becomes part of the membership perk to reserve those rooms. But those are other things you can borrow from, different types of businesses, and if it works with yours, great. But I think one of the other things that we often forget is that we are part of the communities that we actually live in and work in. So there are ways to reach out and find new people and introduce them to the broader concept of gaming. So a community fair. If you had, a handful of games, pick 5, doesn't matter. And mostly what you're doing is educating on what great new stuff, board gaming is all about these days. You can direct them to your store. Say, hey, if you're looking to create a new board game night, it's amazing. Like here, you're really talking to new gamers and gift buyers, right? And you can start building a new clientele by some of these outreach. Or you're creating sidewalk events, and you can radio promote some of these things. So anything that's going to help get the word out to a broader audience, that's where you're going to start growing your base. So just some things that you can borrow brilliance from what others have done in different industries.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think the idea of going outside of the game business and the game trade and looking to see what's working in other industries and seeing what you can take and apply to your own, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we can get a little bit tunnel vision sometimes and focus maybe too much on looking at what everyone else is doing instead of what everyone else is doing and what might be working for them. So I really like the idea of the experts and having like maybe the idea of being like, I'm the RPG guy. I've got the RPG shirt and the RPG buttons, and these are the things that I love, and I'd love to talk about them with you. And like I like the idea of having different like branded uniforms for each particular expert that you've got. Like, that's the guy you want to talk. He's the board game guy. Go talk to him.
Yeah.
Or her, and whatever the case may be. Like, I love that. I think that's a really good idea of really showing like I really believe that these people know what they're doing. They can help you, and I want to feature them as employees, as people who are part of the team. I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, and obviously, all of those ideas, just kind of flotsam and jetsam. Like they're inspirations. They're not going to work for every store and every person. But what I do encourage is the next time you are out in the world, take a look for some of these inspirations and see which ones feel like real opportunities for your store. And I think that's what it's really all about. It's about looking at different industries and bringing the best of what works elsewhere into your store.
You got to look for it, though. That's the key. You have to be on the prowl, because generally speaking, we only see what we're kind of looking for. If we're aiming for picking up our groceries and we just want to get in and out, you're not going to notice the great lighting or the really cool display tables or something like that, right?
Depending so true.
Wherever you are. So the idea of going out and purposefully, consciously being like, I want to find new things to take back to my business is always a good mindset to have.
Yeah. Especially,
and again, follow up to that is going outside of your store. That's also very important. The idea of going outside of your business. Don't spend all day there. See what you can do. Connect with other people in the community. Find out what everyone else is like. What other community centers? What other programs and fairs and events and things that are happening in the local community? What else can you do to make yourself more, part of that?
Yeah.
Get your name out there. Whatever you can do for that. That I think is a good piece of advice for pretty much any retailer. So quick follow up to everything we just talked about while we were discussing it. I thought of the question, how often should people be re-merchandising? How often should somebody be rearranging their store and kind of making things new?
I think that really depends on. The answer is as much as you can. Because if someone walks in and it feels like there's something new, and it might just be the way you arrange things on the shelves, it can make a difference. It makes the experience a new one, and that causes people to pay more attention and to actually shop more. So, but your ability to do so, that's kind of the factor. So
it's not a small undertaking, depending on how big floor space you're talking about and what kind of merch you're moving around.
Yeah, but even again, just by having a couple focus tables, right? If you decide to change those out every week, every time someone walks in, they feel like, oh, what's this? It's that sense of discovery that is the spark that gets people talking, asking you about products. All of that puts them in a shopping headspace, and that's what you want. If they just walk in and they walk right back all your products to the tables where they're going to meet their friends, that's not the objective, right? Yep. You want them to be in a shopping mindset, so you got to break down all those things that feel too familiar, and merchandising is the best way to do it.
My quick thoughts on the idea would be that I think once a week is probably a good target to aim for, because every time you do update something, as long as you are consistent with it and you're constantly updating at least part of the store, you're constantly moving something around and refeaturing or re-emphasizing things, you're giving them a reason to come back, because there's always going to be something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to always have this person be like, I wonder what it's going to look like next time. I wonder what new game is going to be on the table, like you said, the focus table.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I remember from experiences years and years ago with a retail location inside of a mall was that you don't have to rearrange the entire store.
Right.
Sometimes all you have to do is the front windows. Just, swap out some of the games, swap out some of the pieces or whatever, advertising or marketing posters, or just, refresh it once a week. That's all you got to do. And that might be enough to make it feel new, to bring those people in and kind of, like you said, put them into the shopping mindset so that, they're on the prowl for like, well, what's new?
Right.
Exactly. What's happening here? I like it. All right. So this is a slightly different angle. So as a game publisher, what is one thing you wish retailers knew or would do differently?
I think it was not greatly publicized. I think some people have found out, but it's still not well known, I think. Back in 2019, distributors changed how they order games. And what you've seen is it's harder to find the games that you're looking for at a distributor. They're more often, out of them. And it's because they've had to change their stocking practices because of the sheer volume of games that were getting released every year. They were too exposed. So I understand exactly why they got there, but what they did was they ended up changing how they ordered based on the number of pre-orders that retailers made prior to launch. Now, for a lot of companies, that didn't really make a big difference because, if you didn't jump on their games and pre-order them, you might not get them, or you might be allocated just a little bit. But for some companies, like the medium and smaller companies, there's usually never a rush to, I'm not going to sell out necessarily of most of the games, at launch, or at least I hadn't historically. So I don't typically get pre-orders, and some other companies, get far less as well. And why? Because the pre-order system is kind of stacked against retailers. We all understand that. But the difference is that now, if you don't place a pre-order, the distributor is not going to be stocking it. And I almost went out of business in 2019 because I didn't have enough pre-orders. Menace Among Us came out in the fall, and one of the distributors had 12 copies at launch. Which, of course, sold out immediately, but then they didn't reorder it because they only moved 12 copies.
self-fulfilling cycle right there.
Yeah. So it's really important for retailers to know how important those pre-orders now are, especially for medium and smaller companies, if you want to see them in distribution. I don't think it's been well documented or talked about. I talked to every distributor I could when I was, facing this, and ended up changing the way I go to business. So, for example, I had to go to a flooring model with Alliance and anyone else who would take me, but right now it's just Alliance, so that they would constantly have stock of my games. And therefore, Alliance is much more likely to have my games available than anyone else because of that arrangement. Now, I'm having that discussion with the ECD and PhD as well, but right now, those have not been figured out. So I've actually moved to a lot of retailers are doing direct orders with me more than ever, just because either there's outages and people are retailers are finding that to get some of the games they want, they have to seek them out at the various publishers. So certainly we have arrangements to do that as well. They're very friendly arrangements, so just be aware that situation exists, and it may be why you can't find the game that you thought was launching this week. Now, of course, right now it's probably logistics and shipping that's holding those games back. But as we go forward, I don't think with the amount of games that are being made every year, I don't think distributors are likely to change their policies, and therefore you still may see that in the marketplace. But the other thing I just want everyone to know is that every publisher, we want to be your partner. We love special requests. We love event ideas, special merchandising concepts. If you've got an idea that you want to run your store and we can help you at all, just know almost any publisher will jump over themselves to do that. Especially, if it comes with a direct order, it opens up margin on our end to provide even more for you. So let's talk about those ideas and create a program for your store.
What can stores do to maybe alleviate some of that pre-order issue? What could they do to get more pre-orders, or kind of help distributors understand what the kind of games that they're looking for? Is there anything you can do?
Well, again, I think what distributors are waiting for is to actually see retail pre-orders come in. If you let them, hey, listen, give me a case of those or whatever, they'll at least know to stock the game. Without doing that, and again, this is really more important for mid and smaller companies that if you don't pre-order from those companies, they may no longer stock those games. There's just sadly, it doesn't really change any of the issues that I know can happen for retailers regarding pre-orders, which is why they tend not to like to do them unless they have to. But in some cases, it's really going to be the only way that those games actually become available. And again, failing that, if you flipped through the trade magazine and you were excited about bringing a certain game into your store and you can't seem to find it, contact the publisher. Maybe it's stuck in the port, or maybe it should be available in distribution, and I've got a warehouse full of them that I can't get out, and I'm happy to work with you. So it's really the supply chain is changing, and we all have to catch up to the new ways of doing business.
Fascinating. That's definitely something that I'm sure probably a lot of retailers didn't realize, but it makes a lot of sense now that we have kind of explored the nuances of it.
Yeah.
Of course, things have changed drastically in the last year and a bit, for a variety of reasons. But just the explosion of gaming has actually caused its own set of problems.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, there's no retailer that can carry every release in a year. You've got to be choiceful.
Yeah, 10,000 games at a time.
It's impossible. And finally, distributors realized the same thing. They can't take every single game. So they're also being choiceful, and the way that they're making their choices is, what did you guys order? Simple as that.
I think the takeaway from that is reach out to the publishers. I think that's a good takeaway, regardless of the issues with distribution. Is just get into a relationship with your publishers. The games that you want to trade in, find out who makes them. Go talk to them, and they will probably be more than happy to help you figure out ways to sell those games.
Yeah.
So if anything you can do to kind of make those relationships happen and kind of get more connected with the people who are supplying you, that's a great way to move forward and I guess make sure that you have what you want in stock when you need it. Well, we've been on for a lot longer than I expected, but that's great. I always like it when things go a little bit longer than anticipated initially. It's usually a good sign. I do want to wrap up with one final question, which is something that I usually ask everybody who's a guest on the show, because the general theme that we're trying to explore is, success. What does success look like for you? And that's essentially what I want to ask. I want to find out, what does success mean for you with regard to, your games, your publishing company?
Well, it's interesting. I am probably an equal blend of optimist and realist. But my optimism is kind of eternal. So my first answer is, regardless of the popularity of my games or the amount of volume I push, I already feel that I am successful. It's been an 18-year journey, but I have gotten to live my dream. I'm doing what I'm passionate about. I care what I'm working on, which is different than when you're just working a $1 a day job, right? It's meaningful what I do, and that's success to me. What would I like my company to be able to achieve? I'd love to have one of the big mega hits that is forever stocked by every store. I haven't necessarily had one yet. Shobu is probably one of the things that just is on track to start doing that. But yeah, I'd love to have a few more titles now that I'm no longer serving as tight a niche, that are broad-based enough that people really know them and respect them and are able to sell them with ease, and so maybe it gets just a little bit easier. but no, my vision of success is largely fulfilled, and now it's just a matter of, can I crank it up just a little bit?
Yeah. You already feel good about what you're doing. You already got the passion and the purpose. A little fame and fortune on top of that wouldn't be too bad. Wouldn't be too bad. All right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up the episode. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts and your wisdom and your knowledge and expertise. Definitely appreciate it, and I hope the listeners appreciate it as well.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. We'll talk to everybody again in the next episode.